Hey everyone, we're here with the Korg volca modular for Patch of the Week, and this week is a very special patch. It's called the Krell Patch, and it's based on the soundtrack to a 1956 movie in which Todd Barton used a buchla synthesizer to create a self-playing and randomized patch to soundtrack a race of ancient aliens called the Krell. So I'm going to show you how to approximate the Krell Patch on a volca modular. It's not going to be exactly the same, but you're going to be able to get a self-playing patch. And that's not using the sequencer, but using the volca modular's various functions and voice elements to trigger itself. So we've just kind of got a simple sound queued up on volca modular with 2/3 release. And we're going to short the two oscillators together so we have them both going in unison. And the modulator oscillator is going to be 2 octaves down. The next thing that we're going to do is something that we've done many times before, is loop function number 2. Now we have a looping function, and we're going to take the function 2 positive output, and we're going to use that to trigger the woggle. So usually the woggle, by default, is triggered every time a note is pressed, but we can also send a trigger input to the woggle to cause it to fire off. And that trigger input can also be triggered by the looping function number 2. So now you can watch the woggle value light indicator as function 2 loops. It's on a slow loop cycle, but if I turn that up, for example, you can see it loop very quickly and sample random voltages. But I'm going to turn that to about 2/3. And the next thing that we're going to do is use our random voltages that we're now creating without using the sequencer and send them places. So we're going to take the stepped output of the woggle, and we're going to go into the time on function 2. So what's happening now is essentially the second function is looping, causing the woggle to sample every time it loops, and every time the woggle samples, it sends a different voltage to the time modulation input on function 2. So every single cycle of function 2 is essentially going to be a different time, and it's going to be randomized by the woggle. The next thing that we're going to want to do is take the negative output, modulation output of function 2, and go into the modulation input on the first low-pass gate. And that's going to give us our first sound. And so something that the Krell patch has that's specific to that patch is a long release and attack time. So it's kind of a triangle shaped function, and we get that by having the shape knob on our function number 2 up the middle. But we're only on one note, so we want to change that by taking the smooth output of the woggle, going into the pitch input on the oscillator. Now we want to bring the reverb up. I'm going to use about 2/3. The next thing that we can do is bring up the fold and the mod in the oscillator section to give our oscillator some bite. And of course we can use the knob for time on function number 2 to adjust the overall time of our function. So that's a volca modular version of the infamous Krell patch. For more volca modular patch of the week, tune in next week. Thanks so much for watching.